Are you wanting to scale your business with digital products? I'm Becky Beach, and I've grown $1 million digital product empire that earns me passive income while I sleep, eat, and play. Join me each week as we grow our digital product businesses together. This is the Becky Beach Show. Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Becky Beach Show. I'm Becky Beach. In today's episode, we have Christina Lenkowski. She's a podcast strategist. Welcome, Christina.
Hey, Becky, I am so excited to be here in front of your audience today and just really excited to share some knowledge with them and hopefully get them in front of even more of their ideal customers and clients.
Oh, yes, I'm just so excited to have you here. Like a lot of my listeners are wondering how they can get more visible online. And from my understanding, podcasting is the best way.
Yeah, I mean, what we're really going to talk about today is guesting on other people's podcasts and kind of what that looks like and how you can be doing that in your business so that you can be continuing to grow.
Oh, yes, of course. Yeah, because starting your own podcast can be kind of difficult, but getting on other people's podcasts is a lot easier and more fun, I think.
I mean, I'm a little biased, but yes, I would agree with you.
Yeah, so like tell our audience if anyone's interested in what exactly a PR is or a PR strategy.
Yeah, I love that you asked this question because it is, I could ask 5 different people what they think publicity is and get 5 different answers, right? There's going to be people that are like, it's what they do on Mad Men. There's going to be people that are like, oh, it's when you send press releases, right? And so I really like to break it down like this. Your marketing has 3 pillars: owned, earned, and paid. Okay. Mm-hmm. And so the paid is the stuff you can probably imagine is things that you pay for, right? So that might be ads that you place. Perhaps you do an influencer campaign or something like that where you exchange money in exchange to get in front of new people. Then there is owned, and those are all the channels that you own, where you own the content on that, right? So that might be your social media, your website, your podcast, if you have one. You are in control of the content that is going out on those channels, right? And then finally, we have earned, and that is where publicity comes into play. And so what that means is no money is exchanged. You are never paying to be a guest on a podcast. Okay. I want to be really clear about that. And that's something I will go off on if given the opportunity, because I know that's something people are running across more and more. But with earned marketing, you are not paying, you are going on someone else's platform to be sharing value. You are leveraging their audience and you are bringing knowledge and information to their audience, right? To get in front of. And it is by far the most trusted form of marketing. And the reason for that is the person that is listening to you, let's say you're listening to the show right now, you already love and trust Becky, right? You already know that what she says is exactly the type of advice that you want in your business. So by association, when she brings me onto her platform, there is a different level of trust there when you start hearing from me and you start listening to me talk, right? And so there's just this huge know, like, and trust factor that expands when you have these kind of publicity opportunities like this.
Yeah, I so agree. Yeah, I've run into people wanting me to pay to be on podcasts, like actually on LinkedIn not too long ago. They said, "Oh, you'll be a great fit. We have like 1 million reach." And I was like pretty excited to get this opportunity. And
absolutely.
Then they sent me a pamphlet and I looked at it in the fine print. It says, "Well, I got to pay like $300." And I was like, "Oh, it's kind of taken aback."
Yes, as you should be, as you should be. The thing that I always like to say here is like, there's nothing wrong with you placing an ad on a podcast. Like if you decide that you want to place an ad on a podcast, and it's the right audience and it's who you want to get in front of, I am all for it. But that is the thing. It is an ad, right? And the problem with a lot of these podcasters, and I think truly they just don't know what they're doing. But what happens is you pay money, and the second you pay money, that has now become an ad, which means that there is a different set of ethics, a different set of rules around it. And a lot of people don't disclose that they have paid to be on a show, right? Or the show doesn't disclose that that person has paid to be on there. So as a listener, you're really deceived when you find out, oh, that's not just because they trust them and they want that knowledge that's on there. Oh, that's because they paid to be on there. And it just tanks your credibility, tanks everything else from there. So I do think a lot of people do it without knowing what they're doing, but that is kind of the main issue around it, is that disclosure.
Yeah, I do hear about like podcast takeovers. Like this one lady was emailing, and asking if anyone wanted to take over her podcast. So you would just be on there as a host and record, and then she just
Hmm.
puts it on her podcast for people to listen to. Like, what do you think of that?
I mean, was it a paid opportunity or just she
Yeah,
was
yes, it
asking people to
was.
do it?
Yes, it was. I guess she wanted like $700, and you could
Hmm.
like do like a takeover because she said she didn't have the time to be on her podcast for a while, so she was going to
Mm.
have people do paid, spots to take over it. And I
Sure.
said I never heard of that. Like, do you think that was a good opportunity?
I think that it's a good opportunity as long as it's being disclosed, right? Like if
Yeah.
she's like, hey, this episode is sponsored by XYZ, right? Or this
Mhm.
episode is brought to you by so and so. They're also going to be the host today. Something like that that makes it apparent of like there was money exchanged here. I think that that's fine. I don't, my only thing would be as an audience member, would I love that? I don't know.
Mhm.
But I don't think that necessarily the idea is a bad one. Again, as long as everyone's being upfront about what's kind of going on.
Yeah, I personally would never do that to my listeners, just to have
Yeah,
someone new come on because that could turn them off. Like I keep hearing about people
exactly.
selling their podcast to other people and then they don't really introduce a new person. They just suddenly start filming on their podcast and a lot of people can get confused and turned off.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be my main fear if I was to do that, at least, especially for an extended period of time, would just be are people going to even want to listen, after this, after they've kind of had these random people been hosting the show? Maybe they enjoy it, but maybe not.
Oh yeah, so let us know like how you got started being a podcast PR specialist.
Yeah. So I started in the world of PR right out of school, actually right
Mhm.
after a year of travel. And I started to do PR. It was a really good mix for me of writing and also getting to still be really social, which is what
Mhm.
I wanted to do. And so I worked for all of these different kinds of companies, agencies,
Mhm.
etc. before I had my daughter. And then I decided that I was going to go off on my own. And I did what probably a lot of people that are listening in here did, which is like, I was like, I'm going to have a course. Okay. Like, I'm going to start a course. This is it. I'm going to have this course. It's obviously going to make $1 million in my sleep. Like, I don't have to do anything. It's going to be great. Right. And so I did that. I created a course all about PR for tourism regions. That was really my area of expertise was tourism, PR. I worked in a lot of different things, but that was like my bread and butter. And so I did that and I just thought it was going to sell. I
Mhm.
just thought like, oh, I put it out into the world and obviously it's just going to sell. Great. Basically it was like we're done here. And in a surprise to no one but me, that was not how it went. Right. And I realized, oh, I need to be putting more effort into this to actually have this be selling. Right.
Mhm.
We all want to have those passive things. And I mean, same, like I totally get it. But we still have to be getting out in front of audiences, marketing right, et cetera, so that they know those things are even there, even available, et cetera. So, what I did after that kind of first disastrous launch that I had was I tapped back into my intuition and I was like, you know how to do this. You've done PR now for well over a
Mhm.
decade. Like start sending some pitches. And at that point, podcasts, this was like 2018. And so podcasts were still they were a thing, but they weren't the thing that they are today, right?
Mhm.
Like the pandemic and stuff like that really exploded podcasts in a different way. But I started to just pitch myself onto shows that had the ideal audience, and it was night and day in my business. That know, like, and trust factor was upped a lot.
Mhm.
People were wanting me to speak. They were just buying my course, and it just kind of took off from there. And when the pandemic did happen, I realized that I kind of wanted to lean more into teaching people how to do this themselves. And so I
Mhm.
did that. But by the end of that year, I had a lot of people that were just like, hey, could you just do it for me? Is this a service that you'd be willing to offer? And it took me a little bit
Yeah.
of time to decide I was going to do that. But once I did, went in and we've been doing it for many, many years now and have an agency and a team and all that type of good stuff that does this work now.
Yeah, so for anyone listening, maybe they're wondering, like, well, how do I pitch myself? I'm so bad at self-promotion. I don't really want to sound too like a high on my horse. Like, what do I do to pitch myself?
I think a big thing you need to remember is that this is about service and not self promotion,
Hmm.
right? So, like, the host is going to ask, just like Becky just did, hey, how did you get to where you are today? Right. But
Yeah.
for the most part, you are there to provide value. You are there to provide knowledge, right? No one wants to listen to someone on a podcast or talk about themselves for a half hour, right? Or
Right.
40 minutes or whatever. We're talking about whatever that real area is that we love to talk about or we're an expert in or whatever that is. So I really do try to tell my clients, like, just look at it as service over self-promotion. That's truly what it is. Like, people want to know you, they want to have that authentic,
Mhm.
piece of you and view of you, etc. Um, but it's not going to be just you talking about yourself.
Yeah, I so agree. I have been on, I mean, I've listened to podcasts before where the person's just talking about themselves the whole time and they're not really
Yeah.
contributing anything, that they're trying to get people to buy their course. They're not
Yeah.
really helping. They're just trying to promote. And that really turned me off. Like I'll usually just flip
Mhm.
off and then go to something else.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, if I were to hear that, I'd be the same way. I'd be like, okay, well now I never want to buy from you. You know what I mean? Like I was
Yeah.
maybe interested in it before, but like now I'm out. Whereas the opposite effect happens so much, right? Someone has never heard about you.
Mhm.
They listen to you on a podcast, you bring amazing value, you are your true authentic self, and then they're
Mhm.
ready to work with you or they're ready to buy from you, right? They're like, this is the person that I want to learn whatever that particular thing is from.
Was there such a thing as giving away too much value? Like, did you ever run into that?
I mean, I really don't think so. And the reason that I say that is most people aren't going to do it.
Hmm.
Most people aren't going to do it. That's just the fact of the matter, right? Like I could sit here and run through exactly how we send pitches, right? And I'm happy to talk about some of the things that we do when we're sending pitches. But the
Yeah.
fact of the matter is a lot of people aren't going to do that, right?
Mhm.
They're going to want to have a course that puts it all together for them, or they're going to want to be able to just hire someone that can do that on their behalf, right? So I don't get too stressed about giving out like too much information, just in the sense that for most people it's probably not still going to be enough.
Well, how do you recommend people reach out to different podcast hosts? You just to drag, I mean, to cold message them and then pitch, and like, what do you think of that?
Yeah, we do most of our work is cold pitching. I mean, we've worked with over 1,000 podcasts at this point in our agency, so like we do have a lot of connections, but a lot of the work that we're doing is cold. And so
Mhm.
that should absolutely give you power to know that like you can be doing this, right? And so the way that you kind of do that is you're going to send an email pitch, right? So you're going to
Mhm.
have a little bit of information about yourself, and then you're going to dive into a couple topics that you think would make a lot of sense for that audience. So again, we're getting into that service over self-promotion. You are not giving topics that just talk about you or talk about how great you are. They are, what are the things that I can be providing your audience with that I think will be of value?
Mhm.
And so you're going to come with 2 or 3 topics there, kind of flesh them out a little bit. I think that the reason I kind of like to say this is 9.9 out of 10 times when we send a pitch, the host chooses one of those topics. Okay.
Oh,
So it's,
yes.
yes, it is very important that you do this. And the reason that I'm kind of harping on this a little bit is I think that some people think they're doing a favor to the host by just saying, hey, here are the 5 things that I'm an expert in, right? And they just kind of
Mhm.
bullet them out, right? Like they're like, hey, I'm an expert in marketing, branding, sales, right? Whatever. And then it's like, you tell me what you want to talk about and I'm down to talk about it, right? But you are just providing another chore for that host, right?
Uh-huh.
This goes back to my journalism days at Oregon State, like, back in the early 2000s of like, you want to make it as easy as possible to get to the yes, right? And so that's what we're really looking to do with our pitches as well. And I'm sure as a host, you yourself who've seen a lot of pitches can kind of talk about some of the things that really catch your eye when someone sends something over.
Oh, yes. Like for instance, like I have, yeah, you're right. I have been getting pitched quite a lot, but I'm not really pitching myself. I'm just been focusing on my own podcast for it, like, because I'm just trying to get it to 100 episodes. So I have been receiving a lot, and this, and what made you stand out, and also this other lady that was on previously, I think Dylan Jaharis, like she does Etsy, like she was
Mhm.
on previously. And I think what made both of you stand out was it's just you're giving so much good value that I don't have currently. Like I have no shows on pitching for podcasts, and I have no shows really on selling specifically on Etsy. Like, so that's what made them
Yeah.
stand apart. So I do recommend, listening to the podcast host show to see
Hmm.
what they've done before. Because if you're bringing something to the table they've already covered, they're more
Yeah.
likely not to answer you. Would you
Yep. And
agree?
100% I agree. And there's also ways to kind of handle that if they have had someone on that talks about something similar that you do. So this is something that I personally have run across before. Like there are other people that do podcast pitching or teach podcast pitching, right? So sometimes if I do go to a show or we go to a show and I see, hey, maybe 6 months ago, a year ago, they had someone else on that was talking about podcast pitching. Cool. What I'll do when I go to, that doesn't mean I'm like not going to pitch that show. It
Uh-huh.
just means that I'm going to mention, hey, I saw that you had so and so on about 6 months ago to talk about podcast pitching. Loved the episode. Maybe say something that you really liked about the show. And then
Uh-huh.
I would say, what I would love to do is to talk with your listeners about how to get to the next level with their pitching, or what to be doing when the host actually says yes, right? Or how to be reconstituting the episodes into more content, right? You
Hmm.
can acknowledge that they've had someone on to talk about something similar. You just make sure that you're bringing different topics to the table, right? And I think that for most hosts, that's especially if it's been 6 months, 9 months, a year, 2 years since they've had someone else on, they're going to be really open to hearing that other idea, right? That doesn't mean, oh, we had someone on once and now we're done forever. It's like, oh no, if you're going to come on and you're going to provide more value, even better.
Oh yeah, but just don't cover the same things the other
Yeah.
person did. But yeah, you're right. If it was really long ago, maybe they could do a refresher, especially if that episode happened to be popular for them.
Hmm.
They may say, "Oh well, like my listeners are interested in this topic, so and so would be a great fit." So that could also
Yep.
be like a fit for you. That could also be a great option or a great opportunity.
Love that. Yeah, and I think you're exactly right. It's the hosts are also looking at, they want great content, right? So if they can also go a little deeper on a certain topic, that's great for them too.
Yes. What would you say the biggest challenge of podcast pitching is?
I think that for a lot of people, it's the uncertainty or the unknown, right? Like we send
Mhm.
a lot of pitches that we never hear back from. And so I
Yeah.
want to be very clear that like that's going to happen.
Mhm.
So don't let that be something that holds you back of being like, well, if I don't hear yes from everybody that I send a pitch to, this obviously isn't working. It's like, no, that's not how this is going to look, right?
Mhm.
And so what I really recommend is having a pitch template that you create. This
Oh
is something I
yeah.
have a training on that I teach on,
Uh-huh.
so that you are 90% of the way done, right? When you are
Mhm.
sending a pitch, you already have most of it written. So you are just listening to a little bit of the episode, like you talked about before, personalizing that pitch, seeing which of the topics you have listed out make the most sense for that host, and then you're hitting send.
Mhm.
Because the fact of the matter is, you're going to send out quite a few pitches to get the shows that you want to, the episodes that you want to be getting on. And so I think that's important to recognize. I also think you need to recognize that, particularly if you haven't been on shows before or you've been on very few, don't be going after the biggest shows.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
This is a big one that people get really caught up in. They'll be like, well, I don't want to do it unless I'm only getting on the biggest shows, right? The Amy Porterfield, the Jenna Kutcher, the Pat Flynn, the
Mhm.
whatever it is in your particular, area. And I think that you're doing yourself a huge disservice when you look at it that way. And our clients, I mean, we have case study after case study. They make way more money being on shows that are maybe smaller or more niched, but they are the exact audience that really, really wants to hear from that person. Then
Mhm.
getting them on some of the biggest shows, which is great for their credibility, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't necessarily make them as much money. And so I think this is a really important thing for you to kind of think about is like, what is my end goal? Is my end goal that I want to have more money in the bank. I want to make more sales. I want to have more
Mhm.
clients, right? And in that case, be looking at those niche podcasts, be looking at the ones that might be a little bit smaller, but full of the right people.
Yeah.
Or are you more so just looking for logos, right? Are you more so just looking for getting on the biggest shows and that's it? And I'm not even saying there's anything wrong with that. I just want you to think about what
Mhm.
is that goal. And then you can always set a goal to have like a big show that you want to be on and work your way towards it.
Yeah, I so agree. Like I've been like I did aim to get on a big show and I was successful. I just decided to pitch myself using Haro. It's like Help a Reporter.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And now they changed it to Connectively. But one of this big podcaster named Nick Loper of Side Hustle Nation had put out a query looking for podcast guests or somebody on his behalf, and I
Yeah.
decided to message, and then I ended up getting on the podcast, and I was able to get several new clients that signed up for my one-on-one coaching and
Amazing.
my membership.
Yeah. Love that.
And that was a really great experience. So, like, I don't know if I could get lightning in the bottle again and get on another big podcast, but I've been trying. Like, sometimes I don't do it enough. Like how much do you recommend to do it to pitch other podcasts?
Well, one thing I was going to say before that is like you went on Nick's and you knew that that was a really good fit for you and his audience was the right fit. So what I would do is actually put Nick's name into Apple Podcasts, see what shows he's been on. And
Hmm.
those might be some good ones for you to be pitching and just dropping, hey, I was on Nick's show. I know he's been a guest, et cetera, et cetera. But that could be a really great segue onto maybe some other bigger shows because you did that one with Nick, right? When it comes to how often we pitch, so I really like to say when it comes to pitching, I think you can always, of course, this can always vary, but
Hmm.
I would plan on 20 to 30% of the pitches that you send to be you hearing back from the host, right? And ideally, of course, that's a yes or a let's talk further, right? Or something like that. But it could also be a no, right?
Yeah.
It just does depend. But let's say with that, I really love the goal that I would ask you to set is an average of 2 times a month you
Uh-huh.
are being on podcasts. Okay. So some people are like, wow, that doesn't really seem like a lot. That is 24 podcasts over a year. And
Hmm.
I can pretty much tell you that if you have been on 24 podcasts over a year, your business is going to look different than it did at the beginning of that year, right? As if these are the
Yes.
right audiences for you to be getting in front of. And so I think that's a great goal. So with that in mind, let's say what I like to kind of recommend for people, a lot of people get really hung up in thinking I can't like they can't pitch weekly.
Hmm.
Okay. It becomes too much. It becomes overwhelming. They just keep pushing it to the side and it doesn't get done. Right. So, what I really recommend for folks is to do a quarterly pitch sprint. This is also something I teach in the training where I talk about pitch templates too.
Hmm.
And that is where once a quarter, you are setting aside a full day. You are blocking off a full day. There is nothing else that you are going to be doing. And you are going to be pitching. Okay. You already have your pitch template made, but you are going to be sending out, let's say, 15 to 20-ish pitches on that day. Going to be
Oh.
doing follow-up a couple weeks later, and you're going to see where you're ending up, with the goal being that you are on around 6 shows per quarter, right?
Oh,
So
wow.
that's kind of the goal that I would have set for people there.
Oh, that's a wonderful tip. So, like, what if you don't hear back? Like, or do you like track it in a spreadsheet and just follow up if you don't hear back after a certain time, or what would
Yeah.
you recommend to do?
That's exactly what I recommend. A simple spreadsheet is totally fine. We call it a pitch tracker. That's what we call it, like
Hmm.
internally, that we use. But absolutely, put the name of the show, the contact info, the date that you pitched it. One reason I really like a quarterly pitch sprint is that it also means I can batch my follow up like 2 weeks later, right?
Hmm.
So anywhere from like 2 to 4 weeks later, be sending out a follow up. And it doesn't have to be anything super, you don't have to like, it's only going to take you a little bit of time. Just be like, hey, Becky, just wanted to check in on the below. I really think that I'd be a great guest on the show and could bring some value. Thanks so much, right? Or reach out with any questions or whatever. So, and then I just forward, obviously, the original email that I sent so they can see the topics I had below and stuff like that. So absolutely, I recommend a follow up. If you have the time and the ability to, I would also do a second follow up.
Hmm.
But what I like to do in the second follow up, and that's typically like another 3 or 4 weeks later,
Yeah.
I would send a different topic idea. So
Oh,
what I like to
yeah.
do in that second follow up is I'll be like, hey, maybe none of these resonated with you. Here's one more that I think could be a good fit for your audience. You already have the topics in your pitch template, so you're not having to recreate the wheel here. You're just copy and pasting another one that you think could be a good fit. And see if that gets you the booking. We've certainly had that work for us getting bookings before for clients. So yeah, that's something that I recommend as well.
Well, what if you feel like you're just bothering the people? Do you run into
Don't.
people feeling like that?
No, not if you're only following up every if you follow up two times and you follow and you're talking like 2 to 3 weeks in between your emails. I don't think any host is going to be annoyed by that. What they get annoyed by is people that follow up with them after one day,
Yeah,
right? And then they follow up again after a second day, right?
yeah,
Or something like that. You being, and by the way, we're being very respectful. We're just saying, hey, did you get a chance to see this? Would love to be a guest. We're not saying, why haven't you written me back, right? And the reason
yeah,
that I say that is because people will literally say to hosts like, well, why are you not writing back? Like, this is the perfect fit. Like, why would we not, like, why would you not have me on, right? That's not the
yeah,
host's job to tell
yeah,
you, anything like that. It is your job to pique their interest enough that they're going to say, yes, I absolutely want to have you on.
yeah. Yeah, I have like so sometimes I will ignore like I try to respond when somebody does pitch me, but a lot of times I don't because I still don't have the time because I'm getting
Yeah,
so
it's a
many
lot.
pitch because my podcast is getting more visibility.
Yeah.
I'm now on my this will be my 76th or 77th
Oh,
episode and
congrats. That's amazing.
yeah, yes, and I've been working really hard on my podcast, and I am starting to get a bunch more people wanting to be on it. Like before,
Yep.
nobody ever messaged me, but now
Yeah.
I'm seeing a big uptick in people wanting to be on the podcast, and I can't answer every email
Yeah.
that I get. So a lot of times I will ignore it. It's not that I'm being rude; it's just I don't have the time or they're not a good
You're
fit.
just human. You're just
Yeah.
human. You got a life, you got a family, right? And that's the thing to remember is like these podcast hosts or the producers or whatever, they're just human, right? So that's
Mhm.
why I never mind when someone sends me a respectful follow up like a couple weeks after they sent me an email. That doesn't annoy me at all. And so I guess I feel like for a host, they feel the exact same way, right? And we've had, I mean, I can't even tell you how many bookings we've had that were done on follow up, right? And even where a host says, thank you so much for following up with me. I flagged this and I hadn't had a chance to write back. Yes, I want to move forward with doing a booking, right? Or maybe they have a question or something like that. So don't feel weird about doing the follow up if you're doing it in a respectful way and with a couple weeks distance in between.
So, like, when if you get accepted, well, how do you prepare to be on their podcast?
Yes, great question. First, you're going to pop some champagne. No, I'm just kidding. Whatever, though, that feels good to you because it is
Uh-huh.
awesome when we get a yes, but it can
Yeah.
also be a little terrifying. I
Uh-huh.
definitely, for people, they're like, whoa, I did it. And now I have to actually do it. Right.
Right. Yeah.
So I totally get that. And I think that a big thing I say to my clients and stuff like that is a couple of my tips are within 48 hours before you're going to do a recording, listen to an episode of the host show. Okay.
Mhm.
You may have listened to it before when you pitched, but I want you to re-listen to it with fresh ears, kind of
Mhm.
get an idea. What is the vibe? What are we, are there kind of any questions that he or she always asks, et cetera, that you can kind of get an idea of, but you don't need to be sitting there taking notes like copiously, whatever. I just want you kind of listening, and you could be on a walk, you could be driving your car, you could be doing whatever, but just kind of giving you that idea. Like when I hopped on with Becky before we hit record, I let her know, hey, when I was on my morning walk, I was listening to an episode of your show from December, right?
Mhm.
So I always think that it's very cool to be able to kind of let that host know too, like, hey, I've been paying attention, right? I'm not just showing up here blind. I know what you talk about and who you talk to, and I'm super excited for this episode. And that just kind of instills that confidence in the host of like, this is going to be good, right? This person knows what they're doing, what we're talking about, et cetera, there. So that's a huge tip that I have is just make sure you're listening to an episode.
Yeah, I totally agree. And another thing I recommend is what I've been doing personally is I'll prepare a freebie with a very easy to remember link. Like that's what I did for Nick Loper's podcast, a very
Mhm.
easy to remember link to just verbally say it on the
Yep.
air. And then I had so many people sign up to this link. I had lots of email subscribers. I'll say maybe a
Love
little
it.
over 100 signed up to this freebie.
Love that. And absolutely, the call to action is something you need to be prepared for. So just like Becky's saying, at the end of literally every podcast episode that you record, the host is going to say to you, hey, how can people find out more about you, right? Or how can they learn about
Mhm,
how to work with you? And you want to be able to direct them somewhere solid, right?
mhm.
And so what I recommend is having a page, and this can just be a landing page on your website. It does not need to be like anything fancy, right? But on there, you have a freebie and you have ways for people to be able to get in touch with you. Okay.
Hmm.
Your social media channel links, right? If that's something that you want to there. Because people are very interesting. Like a couple years ago, everybody would just get the freebie, download a freebie, get on the email list, move forward from there. That does still happen,
Uh-huh.
but I see more and more where people are following someone on social before they go and sign up for a freebie. Okay. Like
Oh.
they kind of want to suss it out a little bit more before they let them in their email inbox, right? So they might go follow them on LinkedIn, might go follow them on Instagram, whatever. But I think that that's important to have on there. The other thing that I think is important is something that people can buy now or schedule now on that page, that landing page that you have that you're directing people to.
Oh, I love
Be-
that idea.
oh yeah, because there's a lot of people that like they don't need to be nurtured. They are ready. Like
Right.
they just heard you on that podcast. They like what you had to say and they are ready to go. And we have like one of our she's a long-term client of ours who runs a really successful email marketing membership, low cost email marketing membership. And that was like people would come and they would just buy. Like they would just come and they would sign up. Like they didn't need a freebie, they didn't need anything like that. They loved her, they loved what she had to say, and they loved that it was an affordable option for them to just get started on right away, right? Now, for those of us who are service providers, that's where you really have the opportunity where people can just book a call, right? Or apply or something where they can be moving quickly to be getting on with you and ideally coming into your service in that way.
Okay, well, I just had a thought that I think, like, well, I just want to see what you think about it. Well, like,
Yeah.
what if you did make one of these pages, but depending on your topic, like, let's say you're talking to several podcasts, but you're given different topics, and for each topic you talk about, you have a separate page where you have like a particular training, a particular freebie, and you
Mhm.
even give it a special domain, so it's easy to remember and say over the air. Like, what do you think of that?
I think it's a lot when people are new to podcasting.
Oh yeah, like that's what I'm thinking
So
of doing.
yeah, like if you've been doing this for a while and you have the ability to track it, abso-friggin-lutely,
Yeah, I
100%.
really want to. Yeah.
But if you are someone that you're just getting started with this,
Oh,
one
okay.
page, and you can have a couple freebies on it, right? Like maybe you have two freebies that are available that kind of speak to a couple different audiences that you have, right? Then under that, your social channels, then under that, something that someone can buy or sign up for or something like that there, right?
Mhm.
But my key, I guess the point I'm making is I don't want you to be overwhelmed with like feeling like you have to do all that. One page that, like Becky said, is really easy URL for you to remember, whether you do just like a vanity URL or whether it's like publicity by Christina / booked, right? That's one we used to use for podcasts, right? Something that's just very simple for people to get to is fantastic. But yeah, if you have the ability to track further than that, awesome. But if you're just getting started or getting going, one page is all you need, and that you're never going to forget what that URL is there either.
Oh yeah, I just totally agree. So like going back to your previous, response, well, how can we find you and get to know what you're doing?
What? I can't believe you're asking me that. No. A great way to find out more about what we do is to head to podcastpublicityquiz.com.
Uh-huh.
See, nice and easy to remember there.
Yeah.
And that's a great way to know if this is something that you're interested in, if it might make sense for you to have a DIY training, or if it might make more sense to have our team be doing some of this pitch work on your behalf. So you can head there, and it's a really fun video quiz where you kind of get to talk with me a little bit in there.
Oh, definitely. I'll have that in the show notes at beckybeachshow.com. And do you have any last words to say to our audience, Christina?
I do. The last thing I want to say to your audience is you can do this.
Mm-hmm.
And what I mean by that is there are a lot of people out there that are listening to this show right now that are like, ha, I'm never doing that. Right? Like
Oh yeah, yeah, no.
the thought of going on someone's podcast terrifies them, right?
Oh
Like they're
yeah.
like, what if I say something wrong? What if no one thinks I'm an expert, right? After going on the
Oh
show or
yeah,
something like
yeah,
that.
yeah.
And I'm here to say to you, first of all, most of our clients are introverts. So for those of my introverts out there, please know that you're in good company. You just have to have a one-on-one conversation, okay? So it works really, really well for introverts. But secondly, the thing that I want you to think about is what's the worst that can happen? Like,
Mm-hmm.
what do you truly think is the worst that can happen? Most of these recordings, like even today before I hopped on, or Becky and I did hit record, she was like, hey, if something happens, if, someone walks in or something like that, we can always just re-record, right? We can always just cut it out. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I want you to know that that is how 99% of podcasts are. Okay. They're not live. The host is not out to get you. Okay.
Yeah,
They're not
yeah.
trying to get you stumbling on your words or saying something wrong or, something like that. They are trying to put out a good quality show for their audience as well. Okay. I
Uh-huh.
have definitely had times where I have accidentally stumbled, accidentally swore, all these things that have happened when I've been doing an episode. And either it stays in there because that's me, right? Or B, they're able to edit it and I'm able to just say it again, right? In that way. So I want you to know that I truly, truly believe the worst thing that can happen is you don't put yourself out there.
Mm-hmm.
Because the fact of the matter is, if your business does not grow, you are not going to be making money. And we are here, I know Becky's here talking to y'all. I'm here talking to y'all as entrepreneurs, as business owners, as people that are trying to make money. So we have to be getting out there, and podcasts are a wonderful way for you to be doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so agree. So again, make sure to check out the show notes at beckybeachshow.com, and I'll have Christina's quiz and also her website, her social media, like all her goodies for you available there. So again, beckybeachshow.com. Well, thanks so much, Christina, for being here today.
Thank you, Becky. Happy to be here.
Okay, bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much for listening to the Becky Beach Show. Please check out the show notes at beckybeachshow.com and my membership, businessbeachclub.com, to start and scale your own digital product business. Have a great day. See you next time on the Becky Beach Show.